All right, buckle up, because today we're diving headfirst into accelerationism.
Yeah, it's a head spinner.
It really is, and we'll be looking at how it connects to AGI, artificial general intelligence,
Right.
and the fourth turning.
It's fascinating how these ideas all seem to be converging,
Yeah, they really do.
which could have huge implications going forward.
So let's unpack it all,
That's good.
starting with accelerationism.
Right.
I feel like this term is popping up more and more, but honestly, it's a concept that I think a lot of people find confusing.
It is complex, and it doesn't help that it's used by groups all across the political spectrum.
Right.
But whether we're talking about the left or the right, the basic premise of accelerationism is the same.
Okay.
The systems we live with, whether that's capitalism, governments, or even humanity's current state, need to be radically changed.
So blown up, basically.
In a sense, yeah.
Okay.
And they believe the best way to do that is to accelerate things.
So like hit the gas on whatever's already happening,
Exactly.
push it to the limit.
Push it to its breaking point.
Okay, so if everyone agrees we need some serious change, where do they disagree?
The split comes when you ask how we should accelerate and what that change should ultimately look like.
Yep.
Like take capitalism, for example.
Okay.
Left-leaning accelerationists would say that its inherent problems, like inequality and environmental damage, will ultimately lead to its own collapse.
Interesting.
So they see acceleration as a way to intensify those contradictions, almost like using capitalism's flaws to break the system.
And build something new from the ashes.
Exactly.
And what about the other side?
Right-leaning accelerationists tend to focus on accelerating conflict and division.
Okay.
They also believe this will lead to collapse, but with the outcome being a new world order that aligns with their often nationalist or authoritarian ideals.
So even though they both use the same label, we're talking about radically different viewpoints here.
Right.
So two very different flavors of accelerationism.
Yeah.
Both aiming for a system reboot, but with totally opposite visions for what that reboot should look like.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've got the basic idea, but to really understand how all of this works, I think we need to go a little deeper.
I agree.
Back to the philosophical roots of this idea,
Okay.
and specifically the work of Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari.
Yes.
They introduced this concept of deterritorialization.
You know, it's actually a really powerful idea.
Okay, but first, can we just acknowledge how much of a mouthful that word is?
Oh, absolutely.
Deter what now?
I know, but bear with me.
Okay.
It essentially describes the dismantling of existing structures and ways of thinking.
So like how the internet has changed things.
Exactly.
It's broken down geographical barriers, allowed information to spread instantly,
Right.
changed how we communicate, do business, even form relationships.
It's deterritorialization in action.
Okay, so not just physical borders then.
No.
It's about all sorts of boundaries being broken down.
Precisely.
And are you saying that accelerationists see this force, this deterritorialization, as something that we can either be swept away by or something we can harness? Okay, this is where it starts to get really interesting, because now we have to add AGI to the mix.
Yeah.
And this is where effective accelerationism comes in.
Or
AGI, deterritorialization. I'm starting to feel like I need a glossary over here.
it is a lot, but it all connects.
Okay.
So effective accelerationists are laser focused on pushing technology, and AGI in particular, as fast and as far as possible.
It's like they see AGI as this key
Yes.
that can unlock this incredible progress for humanity.
And they think any attempt to slow it down or restrict it is actually holding us back.
And they point to things like the Stargate project.
Right.
You know, that huge investment in AI infrastructure from some of these massive tech companies.
Right.
It feels like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It's ambitious, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But it perfectly embodies the AGIs.
Okay.
It's all about creating the infrastructure and resources to push AI to the next level.
Like a launching pad for AGI.
Exactly.
But even the people behind it admit that there are potential downsides.
Of course.
Like, we've all seen those movies where the robots become self-aware
Right.
and decide that humans are the problem.
Right.
But even if we don't end up with a robot uprising, AGI could still lead to some serious disruption,
Absolutely.
like mass job displacement,
Of course.
as these AI systems become capable of doing things that humans do now.
Right.
And then there's the whole issue of wealth and power being concentrated in the hands of just a few companies,
Right.
the ones who are leading the AGI race.
Exactly. Which could just make social inequality even worse.
So to recap, we've got accelerationists who want to use technology to shatter the status quo,
Yes.
and AGI that seems poised to do just that,
Whether we're ready or not.
whether we're ready or not.
And this is where the fourth turning comes in.
Okay.
Because it suggests that we might be heading to a period of history that's already primed for some massive upheaval.
Oh, great.
And when you layer in AGI and the accelerationist push for rapid technological advancement, things get really complex.
Okay, cliffhanger alert.
I know.
I'm already hooked, but I guess we'll have to wait for part 2 to explore how the fourth turning fits into all of this.
We will.
But before we go, any final thoughts for our listeners to chew on?
Just this. Imagine a world where AGI exists, and it's been developed within this context of accelerationism and a fourth turning. What does that world look like? What opportunities and challenges does it present?
Keep those questions in mind as we move forward.
Exactly.
Okay, we'll be back soon with part 2 of this deep dive on accelerationism, AGI, and the fourth turning.
Looking forward to it. So we've been talking about some pretty heavy concepts here. Accelerationism, AGI, and now the fourth turning.
Yeah, my brain is definitely getting a workout.
I bet, but I'm curious what stood out to you so far? What's really grabbed your attention?
Honestly, it's the potential for things to go completely sideways. You know, we've got these accelerationists who seem, I don't know, pretty eager to light the fuse on the whole system. And then you add AGI developing at warp speed, which could either help us put out the fire or make the explosion way bigger.
Right.
And now we're throwing the fourth turning into the mix.
Right.
It's like saying, oh yeah, and history tells us we're already due for a major shakeup. It's kind of intense.
Intense is a good word for it, and you've hit on a really important point. It's not just about these individual forces, but how they all interact with each other.
Yeah, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts or something like that.
You gotta and think of the fourth turning like a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
You know, it's a period of intense societal pressure where the old ways of doing things are breaking down, and there's this feeling that something has to give.
Okay, I'm following you.
So into this pressure cooker, we're now adding AGI,
Yeah.
which could be driven by people who actually want to accelerate that change or even chaos.
So it's not a given that AGI will automatically make things worse, but it definitely has the potential to throw some serious fuel on the fire.
Think of it like this. Fourth turnings are often marked by a clash between the powers that be and those who are trying to create a new order.
Got it.
Now imagine those groups, the ones vying for power, having access to super advanced AI.
That's a little scary.
It could shift the balance of power in ways that are hard to predict.
It's like giving superpowers to both sides of a fight that's already heated.
It's a great analogy, and it raises some big questions like, how might AGI affect the economy during a fourth turning?
Yeah, good question.
We already know that automation could cause massive job losses.
Right.
So now imagine that happening during a time of social and political instability.
That's a recipe for disaster.
It could be. People are already stressed about jobs, cost of living, the future in general.
Yeah.
Throw mass unemployment into the mix, and things could easily reach a boiling point.
Yeah, and it's not just losing jobs. It's about who benefits from AGI, right?
Yeah.
If all the wealth generated by this technology stays in the hands of a tiny elite, it'll just worsen the inequality that leads to fourth turning crises in the first place.
Exactly. So we've got this potential for economic turmoil, social unrest, and even new types of conflict as countries or powerful groups weaponize AGI.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But it's vital that we try to understand these possibilities because this isn't about giving in to fear.
Right.
It's about understanding so we can make more informed choices.
Okay, so what can we do? Is there any way to navigate all of this and come out the other side in a good place, or are we just along for the ride and hoping for the best?
That is the million-dollar question, and there are no easy answers.
Yeah.
But one thing's for sure, we can't just sit back and watch this all happen. We need to be actively shaping this future.
Okay, but what does that look like?
I think it starts with changing our mindset. We need to move past these simple stories about technology being good or bad.
Right.
And really have a more nuanced conversation about how we want to develop and use these powerful tools.
So less hype, less fear-mongering, more actual thinking.
Exactly. We need to be asking the tough questions, like who's in control of AGI development?
Right.
How do we make sure everyone benefits, and not just the select few? What safeguards do we need to prevent its misuse?
Yeah, it feels like those are conversations that should be happening everywhere, not just among tech experts or politicians.
Absolutely. This needs to be happening in homes, schools, communities, everywhere. globally.
Right.
We need to be talking about the values that should guide all of this.
Because it's not just about the technology itself, but how we choose to use it.
Exactly. And that choice, that responsibility is on all of us. We can't just leave it to someone else.
Well, what can people listening do right now to start making a difference?
Stay informed. Don't just take sound bites and headlines at face value.
Right.
Dig a little deeper, seek out different viewpoints, and talk to people who have different opinions.
So do your research, think critically, and form your own conclusions.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to get involved.
Yeah.
Support organizations that are trying to develop AGI responsibly. Advocate for policies that prioritize human well-being. Make your voice heard.
So we've talked about the downsides, but you said earlier that there's a chance AGI could help us solve some of the problems we're facing.
Absolutely.
Can you talk about that a little more?
Sure. It's important to remember that fourth turnings aren't just about destruction and chaos.
Okay.
There are also times of renewal, where new ideas and solutions emerge.
Okay.
And AGI, if we use it wisely, could be a powerful tool for positive change.
So instead of making things worse, it could help us get through this turbulent time and come out stronger.
Exactly. Imagine using AGI to come up with clean energy solutions to help with climate change, or creating more equitable and sustainable economic systems,
Yeah.
or using it to improve healthcare and education in ways that benefit everyone.
That's a hopeful picture.
It is hopeful, but this isn't about naive optimism.
Right.
It's about understanding that we have choices to make.
Okay.
We can either let these forces overwhelm us, or we can be active participants in shaping the future.
It all comes back to that idea of agency, of taking responsibility.
Exactly. And I think that's a key takeaway here.
Yeah.
We're living in a time of crazy change.
Yeah.
And it can be a bit much, but it's also a really exciting time.
Yeah.
We have a chance to shape this future to make it something that benefits all of humanity.
But that chance comes with a responsibility to be informed, to talk to each other, and to actually do something.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
So we've covered some pretty heavy stuff in this deep dive, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Accelerationism, pushing systems to their breaking point to force change,
Right.
AGI, and its potential for both, amazing advancements and some serious disruption.
Right.
And then the fourth one, turning this idea that history moves in cycles and we might be in the middle of a major societal crisis right now.
Yeah. It can feel kind of overwhelming, even a bit scary at times.
No kidding.
But I think it's important to remember that understanding these things doesn't have to paralyze us.
Right.
Knowledge can be a powerful tool against fear.
Absolutely. It's like that saying, forewarned is forearmed.
Exactly.
The more we understand these complex dynamics, the better chance we have of navigating them, maybe even using them to our advantage.
Right. And that's where the concept of the fourth turning becomes really interesting.
Okay.
Because if you look back historically, these periods of crisis have also been periods of incredible innovation and societal transformation.
So it's not just about weathering the storm, it's about recognizing that the storm itself might be what helps create something better.
Think about it like this. The fourth turning is often described as a time of immense pressure,
Right.
when the old ways just aren't working anymore.
Okay.
And there's this growing sense that something has to give.
Yeah.
So imagine channeling all that pressure, all that collective energy.
Towards something good.
Exactly, towards building a more just, sustainable, and resilient world.
Okay, so instead of letting the pressure cooker explode, we figure out how to use all that heat to cook up something amazing. Okay, but how do we actually do that? It's easy to talk about these big ideas, but what can we actually do to make sure this fourth turning, with all its potential for chaos, actually leads to something better?
I think it starts with developing the right mindset, one that's all about adaptability and resilience.
Okay.
Because the world is changing faster and faster, and that's not going to stop anytime soon.
Right.
So we need to be ready to learn and adapt and evolve as things change.
It's like we need to be mental gymnasts, able to bend and flex and stay balanced, even when things are shifting all around us.
I love that analogy.
Okay.
And just like gymnasts train their bodies to be strong and flexible, we need to train our minds to be open to new ideas, to be comfortable with uncertainty, and to be willing to let go of old ways of thinking that aren't working for us anymore.
So embrace the unknown, stay curious, and be open to learning new things.
Exactly.
Got it. But what about on a larger scale? What can we do as a society to make sure this fourth turning leads us to a better future?
I think one of the most important things is to build stronger communities and collaborate more.
Okay.
The problems we're facing, whether it's climate change, inequality, or the risks of AGI, are just too big and complicated to solve on our own.
Sure.
We have to work together across different fields, countries, even ideologies to find solutions that work for everyone.
It's interesting if you look back, fourth turnings have been times when communities come together to face challenges.
Yeah, it's like when things get tough, we remember that we're all in this together.
And this is where effective accelerationism, with its focus on technology, could actually be a force for good.
Right.
If we can channel all that energy towards solving problems instead of just chasing profits or power,
Exactly.
we might be able to reduce some of the risks and create a more equitable and sustainable world.
Absolutely.
So harness the power of AGI for the right reasons. Make sure it benefits everyone, not just the select few.
Right. It sounds simple, but I'm sure it's a lot harder in practice.
Yeah.
It'll take a real effort to shift our values, to prioritize people and the planet over short-term gains.
And hold those in power accountable.
Yes, and demand that technology is used for the good of everyone.
So it's not just about developing new technologies, but about a new way of thinking, a new way of being.
I think that's a great way to put it.
And I think that's a really powerful message for our listeners to take away from this deep dive.
Absolutely.
We're at a crossroads. The choices we make now will determine what kind of world we create.
It's a lot of pressure, but also an incredible opportunity.
We get to help shape the future. So to all our listeners, we'll leave you with this final thought.
Okay.
As AGI continues to develop, as this fourth turning unfolds, and as the forces of accelerationism keep shaping our world, what role do you want to play in this story? What kind of future do you want to help create?